We ask law enforcement what was the most scary paranormal call you've ever responded to. Cop, real call. I have been on patrol for several years and love stuff like this. I had a backup officer with me who witnessed everything. Dispatch sent me to a call in a mountain area late one night. Dispatch said the caller reported several people holding a baby above their heads and chanting while standing on her property. The call sounded ridiculous and I smirked as dispatch gave the details. I arrived at the proper address after driving about 20 minutes along a mountain road. There's not much else up here and it was extremely quiet. No one walks around out here and there aren't very many cars driving this late. I walked along a gated driveway through a light wooded area. I found the caller's house, with 2 dim lights near the front door. The house was surrounded on 3 sides by heavy woods. I felt a little uneasy just looking at the house. I knocked on the front door while standing on a larger patio. I heard something move to my left, which startled me because it was close. It sounded like a person, something big. I looked to the left and used my flashlight to light up the patio. I did not see anyone. I continued to knock. I could hear 2 voices inside the house. I clearly heard a male and a female. This made me feel a little better. I thought I heard someone on the patio, but it must have been someone inside. The female eventually opened the door. She was terrified, almost crying. She asked me to come inside and close the door. She led me to the living room, where I saw a very cheap security monitor, almost like a baby monitor camera setup, with audio and video playing. The camera setup only provided live feed. The camera was positioned to view the front door and patio area where I was just standing. The audio was silent as I watched the monitor for a few seconds. The woman began to explain when I interrupted and asked where the male was inside the house. I heard his voice. She looked confused and said she was here alone. I was surprised because I know for a fact I heard a male's voice when I knocked. I asked her several times and initially thought she was lying to me. My partner checked the house and did not find anyone. The woman said she was reading while sitting on the couch when she heard something over the security camera. She looked at the display and saw 2 people on the patio standing at the front door. She heard knocking at the door and called the police. I looked at the monitor, and although it was low quality, I could see the patio and front door area with decent clarity. As the woman continued to explain, the audio on the monitor went from quiet to extremely loud. We all stopped talking. The caller was shaking. I looked at the monitor but not see anyone. Loud audio continued to blast from the speakers. The audio sounded like wind, but it was not windy that night. I asked the woman, "What is that?" And she said, "It's them." I looked at my partner, who was nervous. The woman gives me her cell phone, stated that she took pictures of the monitor, showing the 2 people on her patio. I looked through several low-quality pictures and did not see anything. I continued to scroll, and sure enough, I see what looks like 2 tall figures standing at the door. One of the figures is holding something. The figure looks strange, all dark and featureless, in contrast to the video I saw on the monitor. I was in disbelief and thought, oh my god, she's telling the truth. I continued to scroll and saw one figure holding something over its head. Another picture showed the item at the base of the door, with both figures standing near it. I tried to reason, to explain what could have caused these images, but it was pretty apparent that there had been 2 subjects on her patio. We check outside, walking the property of the tree line. I mentioned the movement on the patio and the male voice from inside the house. My partner asked me to stop talking about it. We finished checking and returned to speak with the caller. She said she'll be driving into town and staying at a hotel because she's too scared to stay here tonight. We walk along the driveway back to our cars. My partner jumps into the patrol car and peels off. I laughed, but I felt really uneasy. Standing there in the dark, I leave shortly afterward. Fire EMS here. This is not my story. It happened on a different shift, but Captain working overtime with us one day told it to us, and it creeped me out. The captain was on first due engine company that was dispatched to a residential fire alarm in the middle of the night. Our dispatch protocols require us to send the first due unit emergency to a fire alarm. while the second due engine and ladder company respond routine. We go to tons of fire alarms, and 99% of the time, they're caused by a faulty system or burnt food, so we usually don't get too worked up over them. Anyways, as they approach the neighborhood, they see the orange glow in the distance, and when they get to the scene, they find a 4,000 square foot house with heavy fire showing on the rear, and they've already broken through the roof. The call was then upgraded to a working structure fire, and more units were dispatched to assist. The captain of the first due stayed on the outside the whole time. He was incident commander until the 1st Battalion chief arrived on the scene and took over, and then assumed the safety role. So, he's out on the outside in radio contact with crews that are inside fighting the fire. After the bulk of the fire had been extinguished and operations were winding down, the captain sees smoke inside a second-story window and asks a crew inside to go inside the room on the BC corner to make sure the fire hadn't spread to the other side of the house. The crew search for a few minutes and radio back. "There's no room there, sir." The captain is a bit confused as he's staring at what is clearly a window that is attached to a room of some sort. He relays detailed instructions of where the room should be to the crews inside, and they again advise that they can't find anything. Incredulous, the captain asks the incident commander for permission to go inside the structure so he can show the interior crews exactly where the room in question is. His request is granted. As he goes inside, walks up the staircase and walks towards the corner in question. There's no room there, just a hallway with a corner. No doorway, no window, no room. Knowing that there has to be something behind the wall, they breach the drywall and crawl through to find a child's bedroom. The bedroom has a dresser, a desk, and a perfectly made bed that looks as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. For whatever reason, the owner of the home decided to wall off the bedroom and leave it just how it was, untouched and inaccessible. The captain said it was one of the strangest and eeriest things he's seen in a while. This is my dad's story. He went to a call where a father had gone crazy and decided to shoot his family. He killed his wife and was looking around trying to find his 5-year-old son to shoot him. The boy had to run outside and was trying to hide on the side of the house behind the trash cans. The father eventually found him and point blank emptied nearly a full magazine at the boy. When my dad arrived, they found the boy in shock, hiding right where his dad found him, not a wound on his body. There were bullet holes on the side of the house all around the boy. When they finally got to question him about it, they asked him what happened when his dad found him on the side of the yard. The boy replied, "The angel was in front of me with a shield, and he saved me. He pushed the gun away from me." I was a Met police officer serving with a diplomatic protection group during the 80s. I was on night duty on protection of a government building in Carlton House Terrace in central London. It was in the early hours of the morning, and I decided to take a walk around the outside perimeter to check that all is well. I opened the front door to see a young boy standing about 12 feet away from me. He was wearing an Edwardian tweed cap, jacket, plus 4 trousers and long socks. He was also carrying a heavy, old-style leather football. Where this property is used as a great deal for filming as it's very atmospheric. Think Sherlock Holmes. I said, "Hello, what are you doing here?" He smiled and bounced the ball. I realized that the ball made no sound upon striking the ground. I then saw standing behind him was a lady, in her late 30s, wearing a small straw hat with flowers and cherries on it. She was wearing a long cream cotton dress, Edwardian style with legs of mutant sleeves. She beckoned to the boy with her hand to come here. He smiled at me and waved and joined the woman. They turned away from me and vanished. I know I was not dreaming. I requested a signal check on my radio to my control. Perhaps I experienced a time slip. I am a police officer working on an emergency response team on a busy London borough. We took a call to a suspected domestic incident in a block of flats. The informant said that she could hear screamings and sounds of disturbance coming from the flat above her own. Once we arrived, my colleague and I knocked on the door of the flat the informant said the noise was coming from. I've heard nothing on my way up, and certainly couldn't hear any disturbance coming from that address. To be honest, I heard nothing at all. After knocking twice, we had no response. My colleague left me to go downstairs and speak directly to the informant. I stayed by the door. I knocked again after some time. It was answered by an elderly woman. She's clearly been asleep and was alarmed to see me standing outside. I told her that someone had called saying they could hear a disturbance coming from her dress. I asked her if there was someone else in there with her. She looked bemused and told me that she lived alone and had been sleeping. I asked her if I could come in to satisfy myself that no one else was there. She invited me in, and I walked into a small, 2-bedroom flat. The flat was in darkness apart from her hall light and her bedside lamp. I began searching through the flat. As I approached the final door, the living room, my colleague called up to me on the radio. He told me he was on my way and asked if I was okay. I told him everything was fine, wondering why he sounded so flustered. He told me he was with the informant and could also hear screaming and loud thuds coming from the flat I was in. I told him he must be mistaken as I was almost done searching the flat and I have heard nothing whatsoever. I have to admit, a feeling of unease as I opened the final door, like all the other rooms, it was in darkness but was freezing cold. My breath misted immediately. There was no one in the room and no signs of disturbance. No window was open. I called my colleague and asked him to listen out for my footfall. He said he could hear my feet as I stamped them, but said that the screaming had stopped. This coincided with me opening the door. I left shortly after, apologizing to the elderly woman for waking her. I have no rational explanation for this at all. My colleague and I left feeling very creeped out.